What's up, everybody? It's the Benchwarmers, and we're back again with another NBA video. So this will be a series which will cover both the NBA and the NFL. We'll be redrafting in honor of the upcoming NBA draft, each of the past 6 NBA and NFL drafts. So from 2015 through 2020, you saw our 2020 NFL video, but for the rest of the videos, we'll be starting in chronological order from 2015. So today's video, we'll be redrafting the top 10 picks from the 2015 NBA draft. This is a kind of a consequential NBA draft. A lot of the big name stars who are doing well right now came from this draft, and there was a lot of role players who came from this draft. So without further ado, let us start with the first overall pick, which belonged to, for the second year in a row, the Minnesota Timberwolves.
All right, the first overall pick is the Timberwolves, and they took Karl Anthony Towns. There's really only two options for who they should take in this redraft, and that's Karl Anthony Towns and Devin Booker. However, I'm going to have them sticking with Cat because, don't fix what's not broken. He's had an amazing career with the Timberwolves so far, so I don't really see any reason they should change that.
With the second pick, you have the LA Lakers, who originally took D'Angelo Russell, who wasn't that good with them, but once he switched teams, he became a very good player and even a one-time All-Star. But instead, I have them taking Devin Booker. Devin Booker has been amazing, especially this past season and in the playoffs. He had a 70-point game when he was, I think, only 20 or 21 years old. He was really young coming into the league, and it took him maybe a year or so to develop. But I think he would fit really well on that growing Lakers team, and maybe he could have stayed and as they got LeBron, and we would have a different history.
At third, the Philadelphia 76ers took Jahlil Okafor, but in our redraft, we have them taking Kristaps Porzingis. I think this pick came down to Kristaps Porzingis or D'Lo, but we thought Porzingis was probably a better fit for the Sixers at the time, just because they were in need of a center, which is probably why they drafted Okafor. And also, when you look at the players, it's arguable that Porzingis is better. Before the 2018 season where he got injured, he was averaging 23 points and around 10 rebounds on pretty efficient shooting. And he's actually a really good three-point shooter for a center. And he's a pretty solid rim protector too. I think D'Lo is pretty good, but he hasn't really released his full potential yet. And I think at times he can be a little bit inconsistent. So while they're both really good players, we ultimately took Kristaps here.
Now we have the fourth overall pick. My New York Knicks originally took Kristaps Porzingis, but obviously he's not on the board in this redraft. So I'm going to go with the player that we've mentioned multiple times already, a very, very strong player, and actually the only player left that has appeared in an All-Star game, and that's D'Angelo Russell.
So this is sort of a segmentation between the top 4 players in this draft and the rest of the draft. The rest of the draft is a lot of role players, really solid at one thing, or really good all-around players who complement stars really well. But these are not all stars. So with the 5th pick, the Magic originally took Mario Hezonja. His nickname was Super Mario, and his highlight of his NBA career, he actually has 2 highlights. One was when he clamped LeBron on a possible game winner in the regular season when he was on the Knicks. And then the second was when he kind of dunked over Giannis and then just stepped over him for no reason, even though it wasn't really a posterizer. But still, Mario Hezonja is one of the most entertaining bad players in the league. I think he's out of the league, though, but that's unfortunate. Anyways, I went on a bit of a tangent, but in this, I have the Magic taking Terry Rozier. Terry Rozier has really blossomed as a player this season. He's averaging like 20, 21 points a game and was honestly sort of the leader of this team. I mean, obviously, LaMelo Ball was really good, but it was Terry Rozier stepping up, being really efficient, being an extremely good three-point shooter and hitting clutch threes and clutch shots. I think he was in the top 5 in the league for three-pointers made this season. I think his development as a player is really strong, and he's proving himself worthy of the contract he got. So I think he ends up going at 5 to the Orlando Magic.
At 6, the Kings originally took Willie Cauley-Stein. He's actually a pretty solid center, but he's nothing out of the ordinary. He's averaging like 12 and 8 on around 50% shooting, which is why we think they should go for a better center like Miles Turner. And it was either Miles Turner or Christian Wood, but I think Miles Turner has been the more consistent center, even though he didn't have as good of a season as Christian Wood did this past year. Miles Turner is still really solid. He averages around 13 points and 7 rebounds, and he's also a really good rim protector too. He averages 2 blocks per game, and I think he was the block leader of this past season as well. So I think his defense is good, and his offense and shooting capabilities are actually really impressive for a center too. So, usually centers are players that you want to foul at the end of the game, but he actually shoots 77% from the free throw line, and from the three shoots like 35%, which is really solid as well.
Next, we have the Nuggets, who took Emmanuel Mudiay with the 7th pick in this draft. For me, there's really two options who they should take in this redraft, and that is Christian Wood and Norman Powell. Now they're both very strong players, but I'm going to go with Christian Wood here. And that's because I think he's been a better player for a little bit longer. Even in like the 2018-19 season, when Anthony Davis was injured, he was playing really well, averaging around 17 points per game as early as 2018 and 2019. So, and also I just think he has a bit more upside. Like Norman Powell has developed a lot recently, and he's gotten a really good 3-point shot, but I'm not really sure how he can progress further from where he's at currently, whereas Christian Wood could still grow into a much bigger player who can become a better defender and a better scorer in the paint as well. So I think he just has more upside. So that's why I'm going to go with Christian Wood.
At the 8th pick, I have the Detroit Pistons, who originally took Stanley Johnson, probably the biggest bust of the draft. Maybe Hazonia might be the biggest bust of the draft, or Okafor, but Stanley Johnson was really like not that great. He was pretty bad on the Pistons, never developed. He was drafted as a potential player, but just never developed. Might be the Detroit Pistons staff fault, but might be his fault also. But I have them in this redraft, taking Montrezl Harrell, who won the Defensive Player of the Year 2 seasons ago, not this past season. But I think that he's a really versatile player. He's really good on the offensive end, and he, although he's really short for a center, he was really strong player on the defensive end too. He obviously can't compare to a guy like Jokic, and Jokic wasn't honestly wasn't hindered by having Montrezl guarding him. That's why he was basically unplayable last year versus the Nuggets. But I think Montrezl Harrell as an offensive player is really good. He didn't have that great of a season off the bench this year, but I think that in the future, if he gets more of a role and possibly even a starting role, he can be an above average starting center. So I have the Pistons taking Montrezl Harrell at 8.
At 9, we have the Hornets, and we had them taking Norman Powell, and they originally took Frank Kaminsky. Frank Kaminsky is just wasn't that good. He's a center, and he was very inefficient. He shot around 40% from the field, which is actually worse than I think the NBA average for most guards, who usually shoot more, which is just not good. And centers usually are supposed to shoot around like 50 to 55%. And also his defense wasn't that good either. He wasn't getting blocks or steals, and he was just getting these average stats with pretty inefficient shooting. So he wasn't that great. I think this season he actually played pretty well, which I'm pretty happy about. And he's a solid role player for the Suns. The Suns are a championship contender, which is good. So we have them taking Norman Powell because Norman Powell is a really solid scorer. He's averaging around 20 points per game in 30 minutes, and he's actually really efficient too. He shoots around 40% from the three, and he's done so for most of his career. So I think Norman Powell is just one of the best players that's left. And I think the Hornets were definitely struggling at this time. So just having a solid scorer would definitely help the Hornets.
And now we have the last pick of this redraft. The Miami Heat originally took Justice Winslow. We have them taking Kelly Oubre instead. Now, I know Kelly Oubre isn't necessarily the most efficient of scorers, but he does average around 16, 17 points per game fairly consistently, and he's also a decent defender. I think he still has a lot of room to grow as well, and he can be a great second or third option in the future. So I think he's the best player available here at 10.
Yeah, so that wraps it up for our top 10 mock draft. Honorable mention to a few other players who didn't make our top 10: Rashawn Holmes, Bobby Portis, Josh Richardson, TJ McConnell, Larry Nance, DeLon Wright, and a few others. But that wraps up for our top 10 2015 NBA redraft. So stick around for future years of the NBA, and our NFL fans, stay tuned because we will be having 2015 through 2020 NFL redraft. coming up soon. With that said, this is the Benchwarmers, and we're signing out. See ya.